The notification sound from Melissa's phone at 2:47 a.m. should have been my first clue. But like every other red flag in our 15-year marriage, I filed it under things I'll deal with tomorrow and rolled over in our king-size bed that suddenly felt like a continent between us. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Nate Carter, and I'm a 38-year-old IT security specialist who apparently couldn't secure his own marriage. The irony isn't lost on me. I spend my days protecting corporate networks from intrusions while my wife lets her boss intrude into every aspect of our life. Melissa stirred beside me, her auburn hair catching the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window. Even after all these years, she was beautiful. Maybe that was the problem. Beautiful women like Melissa Carter don't stay satisfied with guys like me forever. "Honey, your phone," I mumbled, nudging her shoulder. She bolted upright like she'd been electrocuted. "What?" "Oh, sorry, probably just work stuff." "Work stuff. At 3 in the morning. Right." I watched her fingers dance across the screen, her face illuminated by the blue glow. A smile played at the corners of her mouth, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. "Everything okay?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "Fine. Just Eric with some urgent client issue. Go back to sleep." Eric Dalton. Her boss, the CEO of TechFlow Solutions, where Melissa worked as HR manager. 45 years old, divorced twice, drove a Range Rover that cost more than my annual salary, and had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. I'd met him at company parties. He had this way of looking at Melissa that made my skin crawl, like she was a prize he intended to claim. And the way he'd shake my hand, gripping just a little too hard, holding just a little too long, his gray eyes saying what his mouth couldn't. "I'm better than you." The next morning, I found Melissa in the kitchen, already dressed in her power suit, the navy blue one that hugged her curves in all the right places. She was making coffee with the efficiency of someone who had somewhere important to be. "Morning," I said, kissing her cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume, not the drugstore stuff she usually wore. "Morning. I'm running late. Eric wants me in early for that Johnson contract meeting." "On Saturday?" She paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. "It's an important client, Nate. You know how these things work?" Actually, I didn't. In my line of work, emergencies happen during business hours, or they waited until Monday. But I nodded anyway, playing the understanding husband. "What time will you be home?" "Not sure. Could be late. Don't wait up." After she left, I sat at our kitchen table, staring at the ring of coffee her mug had left on the wood. 15 years of marriage, 2 beautiful daughters, a mortgage we were actually ahead on, and suddenly I felt like a stranger in my own life. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Javier. "Jim? Need to work off last night's pizza." Javier Morales taught high school PE and had been my workout partner for the past 5 years. He was the kind of friend who'd help you move a body without asking questions, though hopefully it would never come to that. At the gym, I found myself distracted, nearly dropping a 40-pound dumbbell on my foot. "Dude, what's wrong with you today?" Javier asked, spotting me on the bench press. "Nothing. Just tired." "Bullshit. You've got that look." "What look?" "The same look my dad had right before he caught my mom cheating with the mailman." I sat up, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Melissa's not cheating." "I didn't say she was, but you're thinking it, aren't you?" The thing about Javier was his annoying habit of being right. We'd been friends since college, and he could read me like a playbook. "She's been working late, a lot, and there's this boss of hers, the Range Rover guy. You remember him? Hard to forget. Looked at your wife like she was dessert, and you were the diet he was about to break." That evening, I picked up our daughters from my mother-in-law's house. Sophie, 12, was all legs and attitude, while 7-year-old Emma still thought I hung the moon. They were the best parts of Melissa and me, and the thought of anything happening to our family made my chest tight. "Where's Mom?" Emma asked as I buckled her into her car seat. "Working, sweetheart. She'll be home later." "She's always working now," Sophie said from the front seat, her tone carrying more wisdom than a 12-year-old should possess. At home, I made dinner. Spaghetti and meatballs, the girls' favorite. We ate in the dining room, the empty chair at the head of the table looming like an accusation. After putting the girls to bed, I found myself in our home office, staring at Melissa's laptop. She'd left it open, which was unusual. Melissa was normally paranoid about her work computer, always logging out, always closing it. The rationale part of my brain said to close it and walk away. The suspicious husband part said to take a look. I took a look. Her email was still opened, and there, in her sent folder, was a message to Eric from 2 hours ago. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Tonight was incredible. M. My hands shook as I scrolled through more messages. They went back months. Intimate messages. Planning meetings that weren't meetings. Hotel reservations. And then I found the folder. Hidden in her documents, labeled Project Files, were videos. Videos of my wife with Eric Dalton in what looked like a hotel room. The timestamp showed they were from this afternoon, while I was at the gym, while our daughters were at their grandmother's house. The last video had a message attached. For when you're ready to see what you've been missing, what you could never give me. M. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. The woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my children, had not only betrayed me, but documented it, planned it, savored it. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my living room, staring at family photos on the mantel. Melissa and me on our wedding day. The girls' first steps, Christmas mornings, vacations to the beach. All of it felt like evidence from someone else's life. When Melissa came home at midnight, I was still sitting in the dark. Nate, why are you up? I turned on the lamp beside my chair. She looked beautiful, glowing even, satisfied in a way I hadn't seen in years. How was your meeting? Long. Productive. Eric sends his regards. I'll bet he does. Something in my tone made her pause. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just that Eric seems very invested in your work. She kicked off her heels and sat on the couch across from me. He's a good boss, Nate. He appreciates what I bring to the company. I'm sure he does. We stared at each other across the coffee table that suddenly felt like a chasm. I could confront her now, lay out everything I'd found, demand explanations, but something held me back. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was strategy, or maybe it was the realization that I didn't want to hear her confirm what I already knew. I'm going to bed, she said finally. I'll be up in a minute. But I wouldn't be. I'd sit in that chair until dawn, drinking bourbon and planning what came next. Because if 15 years of marriage had taught me anything, it was that Melissa always underestimated me. That was about to be her biggest mistake. Monday morning brought rain and the kind of gray sky that matched my mood perfectly. I dropped the girls at school, watching them run through the parking lot with their backpacks bouncing, blissfully unaware that their world was about to change. At work, I couldn't concentrate. My job involved protecting digital assets from people who wanted to steal them, but I couldn't protect my own marriage from a man in an expensive suit and a midlife crisis. Around lunch, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. I was going to fight back. But first, I needed intelligence. I called Melissa's office, disguising my voice slightly. Hi, this is David from Johnson Industries. I need to confirm the time for our meeting with Eric Dalton today. Oh, Mr. Dalton is out of the office today, the receptionist said. He's in meetings until this evening. Would you like me to connect you with someone else? No, that's fine, thank you. Meetings until evening. Right. I left work early, telling my boss I had a family emergency. It wasn't exactly a lie. The Riverside Hotel was downtown, expensive, discreet, the kind of place where rich men took other men's wives. I parked across the street and waited, feeling like a private investigator in a bad movie. At 3:30, Eric's Range Rover pulled into the valet area. He stepped out, checking his Rolex, smoothing his silver hair. 5 minutes later, Melissa's Honda arrived. She'd changed clothes since this morning. Gone was the conservative work attire, replaced by a red dress I'd never seen before. They didn't acknowledge each other in the lobby, but I watched through the hotel's floor-to-ceiling windows as they met at the elevator bank. Eric's hand found the small of her back as the doors closed. I sat in my car for 2 hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. When they finally emerged, Melissa's hair was different, her lipstick gone. Eric handed something to the valet, probably a tip large enough to ensure discretion. That night, Melissa came home with Chinese takeout and a story about working through lunch. You look tired, she said, studying my face. Just a long day. How was yours? Busy. Eric had us running around all afternoon with client meetings. The lie came so easily, so naturally, that I wondered how many others I'd swallowed over the months. Tuesday, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I hired a private investigator. His name was Tom Bradley, a former cop with tired eyes and an office that smelled like coffee and disappointment. He listened to my story without judgment, taking notes in a small pad. How long do you think this has been going on? He asked. Based on the emails? At least 4 months, maybe longer. And you want what, exactly? Evidence for divorce proceedings? I thought about that. I want to know everything. Where they go, what they do, who knows about it. I want a complete picture. That's going to cost you. I don't care. Tom nodded. Fair enough. Give me a week. That week was the longest of my life. I went through the motions. Work, dinner with the girls, small talk with Melissa. While inside, I was planning. Because somewhere between finding those videos and sitting in that hotel parking lot, I'd realized something important. I wasn't just angry about the affair. I was furious about the arrogance, the assumption that I was too stupid, too weak, too insignificant to fight back. Eric Dalton was about to learn how wrong he was. Tom called me the following Tuesday. We need to meet. His office felt smaller this time, cramped with evidence of my wife's betrayal. Photos, credit card records, hotel receipts, a timeline that painted a picture of systematic deception. It's bad, Tom said without preamble. They've been meeting twice a week for the past 6 months. Always the same hotel, always the same room. He pays cash, but she's been using the company credit card for incidentals, drinks, room service, spa treatments. Spa treatments? Your wife likes the full service experience. Massage, facial, the works. All charged to TechFlow Solutions. I studied the photos. Melissa and Eric holding hands in the hotel bar, kissing in the parking garage, her head thrown back, laughing at something he'd said. There's more, Tom continued. Dalton's married. Has been for 12 years. His wife is Camille Dalton, 40 years old, interior designer. They have 2 kids, both in private school. Does she know? Hard to say, but I doubt it. Rich wives are usually the last to know and the first to get screwed in the divorce. I stared at a photo of Camille Dalton leaving what looked like an upscale grocery store. She was beautiful in a different way than Melissa, elegant, refined, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She looked like the kind of woman who read books instead of celebrity magazines, who could discuss wine without checking the price tag first. I want to meet her, I said. Tom raised an eyebrow. The wife? That's not usually how these things go. Nothing about this is usual. What are you thinking? I wasn't entirely sure yet, but an idea was forming, a plan that went beyond simply exposing the affair, something that would give Eric Dalton exactly what he deserved. I'm thinking that Camille Dalton and I have something in common, I said. We're both married to people who don't deserve us. That evening, I did something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. I started researching Camille Dalton. Her interior design business had a website with photos of beautiful homes and glowing client testimonials. Her social media showed a woman who loved art, good food, and her children. She volunteered at the animal shelter, donated to literacy programs, and from what I could tell, had no idea her husband was screwing my wife twice a week at the Riverside Hotel. The plan that had been forming in my mind began to crystallize. Eric Dalton thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. He'd stolen my wife, disrupted my family, and assumed I'd simply roll over and accept it. He was wrong. But I wasn't going to destroy him with lawyers or confrontations or public scenes. I was going to do something much worse. I was going to make him understand what it felt like to lose something precious, and I was going to use his own wife to do it. Finding an excuse to meet Camille Dalton turned out to be easier than I'd expected. Her daughter attended the same private school as several of my coworkers' kids, and she volunteered for their annual fundraiser. I signed up to help with the silent auction, something I'd never done before, but that Melissa was too busy with her work meetings to question. The fundraiser planning meeting was held at the school on a Thursday evening. I arrived early, nervous in a way I hadn't felt since my first job interview. Camille was already there, arranging papers at a table near the front of the classroom. She was even more striking in person. Where Melissa was all curves and obvious hot, Camille had a subtle elegance that drew the eye without demanding it. She wore a simple black dress and pearl earrings, her dark hair pulled back in a way that somehow looked both casual and sophisticated. You must be Nate Carter, she said, looking up as I approached. I'm Camille Dalton. Thank you so much for volunteering. Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine. No recognition of my name, no awareness that her husband was currently destroying my marriage. Happy to help, I said. Though I should warn you, I'm completely new at this fundraising thing. Don't worry, most of it is just organized chaos anyway. Over the next 2 hours, I watched her work. She was clearly intelligent, managing a room full of Type A parents with the skill of a diplomat. When Mrs. Henderson complained about the auction categories, Camille listened patiently and found a compromise. When the catering coordinator called with a crisis, she solved it with 3 phone calls and a smile. You're good at this, I told her as we packed up the leftover materials. Years of practice. Between Eric's business events and the kids' activities, I've become a professional volunteer. There was something in her tone when she mentioned Eric's name. Not quite bitterness, but a kind of resignation that I recognized from my own voice when I talked about Melissa. Your husband's in tech, right? My wife works for a tech company too, TechFlow Solutions. Oh, you're Melissa's husband. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise? Discomfort? It was gone too quickly to interpret. Eric mentions her sometimes, says she's very dedicated to her work. The way she said dedicated made my stomach clench. Did she know? Was this some kind of test? She certainly puts in the hours, I said carefully. Yes, well, the tech industry demands a lot from people. We finished packing in silence, but I could feel her watching me. As we walked to the parking lot, she stopped beside a silver Mercedes. Nate, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. I'm sorry. It's just, you seem like a nice man, but you look like someone who's carrying a heavy burden. I stared at her, this woman whose husband was systematically destroying my life, and felt something crack inside my chest. Some days are harder than others, I said finally. She nodded slowly. I understand that feeling. We stood there in the parking lot, two people married to other people, sharing a moment of recognition that felt more intimate than anything I'd experienced with Melissa in months. I should go, I said. My girls are waiting for me. Of course. And Nate, if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who might understand, you have my number now. I drove home in a daze, Camille's words echoing in my head. Had she been offering friendship? Something more? Or was I reading too much into the conversation of a lonely woman whose husband was never home? At home, I found Melissa in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, reheating leftover pizza. How was the fundraiser meeting? She asked without looking up. Fine. Met some interesting people. Anyone I know? Camille Dalton, Eric's wife. Melissa's hand froze on the microwave door. Oh, what's she like? Nice. Intelligent. Seems like the kind of person who deserves better than she's getting. Melissa turned to face me, her eyes sharp. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing specific, just an observation. We stared at each other across the kitchen island, and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out if I knew something or was just making conversation. Eric speaks very highly of her, she said finally. I'm sure he does. That night, after Melissa fell asleep, I lay in bed thinking about Camille's question. Was I happy? The answer was complicated. I'd been happy once, or thought I had been, but now I couldn't tell if that happiness had been real or just the absence of knowledge about what I was missing. What I did know was that I felt more alive after 2 hours with Camille Dalton than I had in months with my own wife. And that realization scared me more than anything else that had happened. The next morning, I made a decision. I texted Camille, "Thank you for last night. Would you like to grab coffee sometime? I think we have more in common than just fundraising." Her response came an hour later. "I'd like that. There's a lot I think we should discuss." As I read her message, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation for what came next. Eric Dalton had no idea what he'd set in motion, but he was about to find out. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place that served artisanal coffee and attracted people who worked on laptops all day. Camille arrived first, choosing a corner table away from the windows. She'd traded her fundraiser elegance for jeans and a cashmere sweater, but somehow looked even more beautiful. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said as I sat down. "Why wouldn't I?" "Because this is complicated, and most people prefer simple." I ordered coffee, black, no sugar, and studied her face. There were lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and forced smiles. I probably had matching ones. "Camille, can I ask you something directly?" "Please do. Do you know about Eric and my wife?" She was quiet for a long moment, stirring her latte with mechanical precision. When she finally looked up, her eyes were sad but not surprised. I suspected, for months now. The late meetings, the new clothes, the way he'd smile at his phone, but suspecting and knowing are different things. "I have proof. I figured you might. You don't volunteer for school fundraisers to meet your husband's mistress's spouse unless you're planning something." Her directness was refreshing after months of Melissa's lies and deflections. "What kind of proof?" she asked. I pulled out my phone and showed her some of Tom's photos. Camille studied them without flinching, her expression growing colder with each image. "The Riverside Hotel," she said finally. He told me he was taking clients there for business dinners. "Twice a week for the past 6 months. 6 months. She set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. "Our anniversary was 6 months ago. He gave me diamond earrings and told me I was the most important thing in his life. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not surprised, just disappointed. I thought if he was going to have an affair, he'd at least choose someone single. There was steel in her voice now, and I began to understand why Eric might have been attracted to my wife's obvious hot over his wife's complex intelligence. Melissa was easier. Camille was a challenge. What do you want to do about it? I asked. What are my options? Divorce? Take half his assets, get custody of the kids, move on with your life. That's the practical option. What's the satisfying option? I leaned forward. Make them both understand what they've lost, what they've thrown away, make them regret every choice that led them to that hotel room. Camille smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it reached her eyes. I like the way you think, Nate Carter. Over the next hour, we outlined a plan. Nothing illegal, nothing that would hurt our children, but something that would give Eric and Melissa a taste of their own medicine. The company Christmas party is next month, Camille said. Eric always makes a big show of it, invites all his major clients, uses it to network and show off. Melissa's been shopping for a dress for weeks. Perfect, that's our stage. We agreed to meet again the following week to refine the details. As we prepared to leave, Camille touched my arm. Nate, I need you to understand something. I'm not looking for a rebound or a revenge affair. I'm looking for justice. What's the difference? Justice means they lose something real, something that matters. A rebound just makes us feel better temporarily. I thought about that as I drove home. Camille was right. I didn't want to become like Eric and Melissa, sneaking around and lying. I wanted something more meaningful. I wanted them to understand what they'd destroyed. That weekend, Melissa announced she was going shopping with her girlfriends, Stacy and Heather, two women who'd always treated me like an accessory to their friend rather than a person worth knowing. Don't wait up, she said, kissing my cheek. We might make a night of it. After she left, I called Javier. Want to take the girls to the zoo? I asked. I need to get out of the house. Everything okay? Getting better, actually. I'll explain later. The zoo was crowded, full of families enjoying the weekend. Sophie and Emma ran ahead to the monkey exhibit while Javier and I walked behind, keeping them in sight. You look different, Javier said. Different how? Less defeated, like you've got a plan. Maybe I do. Want to share? I told him about Camille, about our coffee meeting, about the beginnings of our plan. Javier listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. So, you're not going to sleep with her? No? But you want to? I thought about that. Camille was attractive, intelligent, and we shared a common enemy. Under different circumstances, I might have been interested, but these weren't different circumstances. It's not about what I want, I said finally. It's about what's right. And what's right is making your wife and her boss suffer. What's right is making them face consequences for their choices. Javier was quiet for a moment, watching Emma feed the goats in the petting zoo. Just be careful, man. Revenge has a way of changing people. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for justice. What's the difference? I smiled, remembering Camille's words. Justice means they lose something that matters. That evening, Melissa came home with shopping bags and stories about her day with the girls. She'd bought a new dress for the company party. Black, expensive, designed to turn heads. What do you think? She asked, holding it up against herself. Beautiful, I said, and meant it. She was beautiful, even now. That's what made her betrayal so much worse. Eric's really excited about this party. He says it could be career-changing for me. I'm sure it will be. She studied my face, looking for sarcasm or hidden meaning, but I kept my expression neutral, supportive even. You don't mind, do you, that I'm focusing so much on work? Of course not. Everyone deserves to pursue their dreams. Later, after she'd gone to bed, I sat in my office and thought about dreams. I dreamed of a long marriage, of growing old with the woman I loved, of watching our daughters graduate and get married and have children of their own. Melissa had dreamed of something else, something that involved expensive hotels and a man who wasn't me. Soon, we'd both learn what it felt like when dreams turned into nightmares. The company Christmas party was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, the kind of place that screamed money and success. I'd attended these events for years, playing the role of the supportive husband, making small talk with people who barely remembered my name. Tonight would be different. Camille and I had spent weeks planning, coordinating our timing, preparing for every contingency. She would arrive with Eric, playing the devoted wife. I would come alone. Melissa had suggested I skip this year's party, claiming it would be mostly work people, and I'd be bored. I wasn't bored, I was focused. The ballroom was decorated in gold and silver, with a jazz band playing softly in the corner. I spotted Eric immediately. He was holding court near the bar, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers, his laugh carrying across the room. Melissa stood beside him in her new black dress, looking radiant and confident. They stood closer than a boss and employee should, their body language screaming intimacy to anyone who cared to look. But nobody was looking, because Eric Dalton was rich and powerful, and rich, powerful men got to make their own rules. Until tonight. I made my way through the crowd, accepting champagne from a passing waiter, nodding to colleagues from other companies. Near the silent auction tables, I found Camille. She was stunning in a deep blue dress that complemented her dark hair. But more than that, she radiated a quiet confidence that drew people to her. I watched as she chatted with other guests, her smile genuine, her manner warm but reserved. "Nate," she said when she saw me, "I'm so glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it. You look beautiful, by the way." "Thank you. Are you ready for this?" "Are you?" She glanced across the room at her husband, who was now whispering something in Melissa's ear that made her laugh and touch his arm. "I've been ready for months," she said. The first phase of our plan was simple: be seen together. We moved through the party as a pair, talking to other guests, laughing at each other's jokes, creating the impression of two people enjoying each other's company. It didn't take long for people to notice. "Isn't that Eric Dalton's wife?" I heard someone whisper. "Who's she with?" "I think that's Melissa Carter's husband." Interesting. By the time dinner was served, the whispers had reached a critical mass. I could see Melissa across the room, her eyes finding me repeatedly, her expression growing more confused and concerned with each glance. Eric, meanwhile, seemed oblivious. He was too busy working the room, too confident in his own power to imagine that anyone would dare challenge him. That was about to change. During the dessert course, Eric stood to give his annual address. He thanked his employees, praised the company's growth, and made jokes that everyone laughed at whether they were funny or not. "And I want to especially thank my incredible team," he said, his eyes finding Melissa in the crowd. "Particularly those who go above and beyond, who sacrifice their personal time, who demonstrate the kind of dedication that makes TechFlow Solutions the success it is today." The applause was polite but enthusiastic. Melissa glowed under the attention. That's when Camille stood up. "If I may," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. I'd like to add something to my husband's remarks." Eric's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't part of his script. "Of course, darling," he said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Camille walked to the front of the room with the grace of someone who belonged there. She took the microphone from Eric, her fingers brushing his briefly. "I want to talk about dedication," she said, her voice warm but with an edge that made the room go quiet. "About the sacrifices people make for their work, about the choices we make and the consequences that follow." I could see Melissa's face from across the room. She'd gone pale. "My husband speaks about employees who sacrifice their personal time," Camille continued. "But I think it's important to remember that when someone sacrifices their personal time, they're not just sacrificing their own, they're sacrificing their family's time, their spouse's time, their children's time." The room was completely silent now. Eric reached for the microphone, but Camille stepped away from him. "And sometimes," she said, her eyes finding Melissa in the crowd, "that sacrifice becomes something else entirely. Something that has nothing to do with work and everything to do with selfishness." "Camille," Eric said, his voice tight with warning. "I'm almost finished, darling." She turned back to the crowd. "I just want everyone to know that actions have consequences, choices have costs, and sometimes the people you think you're fooling are actually the ones who see you most clearly." She handed the microphone back to Eric and returned to our table, her composure never wavering. The room erupted in confused murmurs and uncomfortable laughter. Eric tried to recover, making a joke about wives and their mysterious ways, but the damage was done. Everyone in that room knew they'd witnessed something significant, even if they weren't sure what. As the evening wound down, I found myself at the bar with Javier, who'd arrived late after coaching a basketball game. "Dude, what the hell happened?" he asked. "Everyone's talking about some speech Eric's wife gave." "Justice," I said simply. "And where does this leave you and Melissa?" I looked across the room where my wife was standing with her friends, their heads together in intense conversation. Stacy and Heather kept glancing in my direction, their expressions ranging from confusion to accusation. "That's up to her," I said. The ride home was silent. Melissa stared out the passenger window while I drove, the tension between us thick enough to cut. Finally, she spoke. "What was that about tonight?" "What was what about?" Don't play dumb, Nate. You and Camille Dalton. The speech. All of it. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. In the darkness of the garage, I could barely make out her face. I think you know what it was about. I don't know what you're implying, but I'm not implying anything, Melissa. I'm stating facts. You're having an affair with Eric Dalton. You have been for 6 months. And tonight, his wife and I decided to stop pretending we don't know. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. How long have you known? She asked finally. Long enough. Are you sleeping with her? No. But you want to. I thought about that question, really considered it. Did I want to sleep with Camille? She was beautiful, intelligent, and we shared something that felt deeper than physical attraction. What I want, I said finally, is for my wife to come home, to choose her family over her boss, to remember what we built together. Melissa was crying now, quiet tears that reflected the garage light. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You choose us or you choose him, but you don't get to choose both. And if I choose him, then you lose everything else. We sat in the car for another few minutes, the weight of 15 years pressing down on us. Finally, Melissa got out and went into the house. I followed, but instead of going to our bedroom, I went to the guest room. For the first time in our marriage, we slept in separate beds, and for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who looked apologetic about disrupting what appeared to be a normal suburban morning. Melissa had beaten me to it, filing first, claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for primary custody of the girls. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I'd been expecting it. What I hadn't expected was the phone call from Tom Bradley an hour later. We need to meet, he said. There's something you need to know about your wife's affair. His office felt different this time, charged with an urgency that made my skin prickle. Tom had spread documents across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. Your wife's been busy, he said without preamble. The affair with Dalton is just the beginning. What do you mean? She's been embezzling from the company. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, shopping trips, all charged to TechFlow's corporate accounts and buried in various expense reports. I stared at the papers, seeing Melissa's signature on credit card receipts, her initials on expense forms. Thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges, all to fund her affair with Eric. How much? Close to $50,000 over the past 8 months. And here's the interesting part. Eric's been signing off on all of it. He knows? He has to. These expenses cross his desk. Either he's complicit, or he's the most negligent CEO in Dallas. I thought about Eric's arrogance, his assumption that he was untouchable. He thinks he's protected because he's sleeping with her. Maybe, but embezzlement is a felony, regardless of who you're sleeping with. Tom handed me another set of documents. There's more. Your wife's been in contact with a divorce attorney for 3 months. She's been planning this, moving money around, preparing to leave you with as little as possible. The betrayal cut deeper than the affair had. Melissa hadn't just been unfaithful, she'd been systematically dismantling our life together while pretending to be a loving wife and mother. What are my options? You could turn this over to the police. Embezzlement charges would destroy her custody case and probably land her in prison. And Eric? If he's complicit, he goes down too. If he's just negligent, he loses his company and his reputation. I studied the evidence, thinking about my daughters, about the life we'd built, about the woman I'd loved for 15 years who had become someone I didn't recognize. There's another option, Tom said quietly. I'm listening. Give them a chance to make this right. Present the evidence, demand restitution, let them know you have the power to destroy them both. Sometimes the threat of consequences is more effective than the consequences themselves. That evening I called Camille. I need to see you, I said. There's been a development. We met at the same cafe where we'd first planned our strategy. Camille listened as I explained Tom's discoveries, her expression growing colder with each detail. $50,000, she said when I finished. That we know of. And Eric's been approving it all, according to the paper trail. Camille was quiet for a long moment, stirring her coffee with mechanical precision. When she looked up, her eyes held a hardness I'd never seen before. I want to confront them. Together. Tonight. Are you sure? Nate, they've been stealing from Eric's company to fund their affair. They've been planning to destroy both our families while pretending to care about us. I'm done being understanding. We drove to the Riverside Hotel in my car, the evidence folder on the seat between us. It was Thursday night, one of their regular meeting times, according to Tom's surveillance. The desk clerk was reluctant to give us Eric's room number until Camille explained she was his wife and needed to deliver important business documents. Money and authority opened doors, even in situations like this. Room 1247 was at the end of a long hallway. I could hear voices inside, Melissa's laugh, Eric's deeper tones, the sound of champagne glasses clinking. Camille knocked. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached the door. "Room service," Camille said in a slightly higher voice. The door opened and Eric appeared in a hotel bathrobe, his hair disheveled, his face flushed. When he saw us, the color drained from his cheeks. "Camille, what are you doing here?" she finished. "Visiting my husband and his embezzling mistress." I pushed past Eric into the room. Melissa was sitting on the bed in a silk negligee, her face a mask of shock and fear. "Hello, honey," I said. "We need to talk." What followed was the most brutal conversation of my life. Eric tried to bluster, to claim everything was innocent, but the evidence was overwhelming. Melissa cried, then got angry, then tried to seduce me back to her side. None of it worked. "Here's what's going to happen," I said finally. "Melissa, you're going to return every penny you've stolen from TechFlow. You're going to resign from your job, and you're going to agree to a custody arrangement that gives me primary custody of the girls." "And if I don't?" "Then I turn this evidence over to the police, and you go to prison for embezzlement," Eric tried to intervene. "Now wait just a minute. You," Camille said, her voice cutting through his protests like a blade, "are going to transfer half your assets to me immediately. You're going to give me full custody of our children. And you're going to resign from TechFlow before the board discovers what you've been doing. You can't prove I knew about the expenses, can't I?" Camille pulled out her phone and played a recording. Eric's voice, clear and unmistakable. "Don't worry about the expenses, baby. I'll take care of everything." "You recorded me?" "I've been recording you for weeks, darling. Amazing what people say when they think they're safe." The fight went out of both of them then. Eric slumped into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 45 years. Melissa curled up on the bed, sobbing. "You have 24 hours, I said. After that, we go to the police." Camille and I left them there, broken and defeated, the ruins of their affair scattered around the expensive hotel room like debris from a crash. In the elevator, Camille took my hand. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty, sad, but also free." "I know what you mean." We drove back to our respective homes, our respective lives, our respective futures that no longer included the people who had betrayed us. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Melissa had returned the money, resigned from TechFlow, and moved to her mother's house in Austin. I had primary custody of the girls, who adjusted to the new arrangement with the resilience of children. Eric had resigned in disgrace, his company sold to a competitor for half its value. He and Melissa had tried to make their relationship work, but without the excitement of secrecy and betrayal, they'd discovered they had nothing in common except selfishness. Camille and I remained friends, bonded by what we'd been through, but careful not to let our shared experience become something it shouldn't be. We had coffee occasionally, attended the same school events, and slowly built new lives from the wreckage of our old ones. One evening, as I was tucking Sophie into bed, she asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Daddy, are you happy now?" I thought about that question, the same one Camille had asked me in a school parking lot that seemed like a lifetime ago. "I'm getting there, sweetheart," I said. "Every day, I'm getting a little closer to happy." And for the first time in years, I meant it. Looking back, I realized that Eric Dalton had been right about one thing. Actions have consequences. He just hadn't expected the consequences to be his own destruction. As I turned off Sophie's light and headed downstairs to help Emma with her homework, I thought about the man I'd been a year ago. Passive, accepting, willing to be taken advantage of. That man was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop trying to save everyone else. Melissa had taught me that love without respect is just weakness. Eric had taught me that power without consequences is just bullying, and Camille had taught me that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. The girls and I were going to be just fine,